I ran the Sydney Marathon last weekend, and here's my recap as to how the race unfolded for me. So if you can't tell from the t-shirt, I did actually run the marathon on the weekend and have the nice medal here just to establish my credibility. But the marathon was a little bit disappointing for me, to be honest. It was a little bit heartbreaking too. I wanted to break 3 hours for this marathon and put a lot of work this year into doing that. Unfortunately, came away with a 3:01:13, which is a massive PB in the marathon for me, which is pretty cool, but just agonizingly short of my ultimate goal, which has been a little bit hard to swallow the last few days. And the what ifs always run through your head when you get that close to something and just don't make it there, unfortunately. But basically what happened, I was really happy with the way I executed the run and felt that I did really well in negative splitting the marathon. I went out with the intention of going about an hour 30, hour 31, and then trying to really bring it home in the back end, and sort of managed to do that, I guess. Like my last 5K was pretty slick, and my last couple of Ks were about 3:55 or 3:58 a kilometer. So really managed to rev it up in the back end, which was the plan. And so from that perspective, I executed it pretty well, but I'd probably think I was just a little bit conservative with my pacing early on. Like I think I was probably, it's going to sound weird, but I was probably too respectful of the course and the distance and not respectful enough of the quality of the training I had, which might sound a bit weird to some people, given what people talk about with that course. But I just felt like I kept holding back in the back end, just waiting for a massive hill or a massive slump to come, and it never did. And then by the time I realized that, I probably just didn't get going early enough in the back end. Probably from about 30K just before Centennial Park, I started starting to charge up a bit and felt pretty good. And unfortunately, just didn't have enough time to try and make up that ground to break 3 hours, unfortunately, which is tough. Although it is interesting when you go on Strava and it says you've done a PB of 2:59:03 for the marathon, but you're still 500 meters from the finish when that happened. So that was, it was pretty tough, to be honest. Course itself, like it's a nice course. Like it's pretty scenic the first couple of K and the end as well. Like I don't think Sydney is necessarily a great place to run generally, but what they did with the course was still pretty good. Like it is hilly, and the thing you hear about with Sydney that I've heard from all my research is that the hills are really tough, and it's the toughest major and whatnot. And I guess a trap that I fell into was believing the severity of the course. I'm not saying it wasn't hard, but for me, like I put a lot of work into running hills and going to Portsea and stuff like that, and I probably bought into too much of that social media hype that it was going to be a really challenging course, which might sound a bit weird and perplexing to some, but for me, as I said, like that Mrs. Macquarie's chair, I was like, oh, not where is it, but I was sort of waiting for the acid to come on, and it never really did, which is, I guess, is a credit and a positive to the training that I'd done, but probably a lesson just to know what the course is, but probably not be too overawed by what's actually going to come, and let that affect the knowledge of your abilities or your ability to pace a marathon anyway. So I guess the lessons from the event are mainly that, just to believe in the quality of your training, and that'll take you where you need to go, and probably less so to not buy into the hype of others, particularly on social media, who talk about these things. And again, I'm not trying to be disrespectful to those that found the course hard. It was definitely a challenging course, but it wasn't as hard as what people make it out to be. Well, I felt anyway, and maybe that's a product of some of the training that I had been doing. So, and I guess the flip side of that is that the training program was pretty specific and was pretty much bang on. Like it felt pretty strong towards the back end to get and cover those marathon paces that I need to get. I just probably didn't do it early enough. So for me, it being an execution error rather than a fitness error or a training error, I think is a really big win, and just a indication that what I'm doing is actually pretty good. So from here though, we'll rest up and then see what happens after this. Like I'm entered into Melbourne Marathon, but it's still probably a little bit too close to really give it a shake, but we'll see what happens, and then dust yourself off and pick yourself back up and then go again, and hopefully go 2:59:59 at some point along the way. But we'll see how we go, and thanks for following along.